Aswapati is observing the very first stirrings of life in material forms. It's as if it's all too much effort for life to exist and move and grow in this inert matter. A wide, unquiet mist of seeking space. A rayless region swallowed in vague swathes that seemed unnamed, unbodied, and unhoused. A swaddled, visionless, and formless mind asked for a body to translate its soul. Its prayer denied, it fumbled after thought. As yet not powered to think, hardly to live, it opened into a weird and pygmy world where this unhappy magic had its source. On dim confines, where life and matter meet, he wandered among things half seen, half guessed, pursued by ungrasped beginnings and lost ends. There life was born, but died before it could live. There was no solid ground, no constant drift, only some flame of mindless will had power. Himself was dim to himself, half felt, obscure, as if in a struggle of the void to be. In strange domains, where all was living sense, but mastering thought was not, nor cause nor rule. Only a crude child heart cried for toys of bliss. Mind flickered a disordered infant glow, and random shapeless energies drove towards form and took each wisp fire for a guiding sun. This blindfold force could place no thinking step. Asking for light, she followed darkness' clue. An inconscient power groped towards consciousness. Matter, smitten by matter, glimmered to sense. Blind contacts, slow reactions, beat out sparks of instinct from a cloaked subliminal bed. Sensations crowded, dumb substitutes for thought. Perception answered nature's wakening blows, but still was a mechanical response, a jerk, a leap, a start in nature's dream. And rude, unchastened impulses jostling ran, heedless of every motion but their own, and darkling clashed with darker than themselves, free in a world of settled anarchy. The need to exist, the instinct to survive, engrossed the tense, precarious moment's will, and an unseeing desire felt out for food. The gusts of nature were the only law. Force wrestled with force, but no result remained. Only were achieved a nescient grasp and drive, and feelings and instincts knowing not their source. Sense pleasures and sense pangs, soon caught, soon lost, and the brute motion of unthinking lives. It was a vain, unnecessary world, whose will to be brought poor and sad results, and meaningless suffering, and a grey unease. Nothing seemed worth the labor to become. Long, long, long ago, we have all passed through this stage. And Sri Aurobindo's trying to help us to grope our way back to those very beginnings of life, to remember what it was like. No knowledge, only vague sense perceptions. Tiny little single-celled creatures swimming about. I think they must have been in liquid, in the sea perhaps, bumping into each other, putting out, they call them pseudopodia, these little jelly-like animals. They push out a part of themselves and surround something and take it in. That was the only life form. And that stumbling sense consciousness was the only consciousness. So Aswapati is finding himself in that world. Of course, he is much more conscious. He's aware of all this going on, but he sees this wide and quiet mist of seeking space. You would read, Dana? 136 at the break.
A wide, unquiet mist of seeking space, a rayless region swallowed in vague swirls, that seemed unnamed, unbodied, and unhoused. A swaddled, visionless, and formless mind asked for a body to translate its soul. Its prayer denied, it fumbled after thought.
So he finds himself in this misty region. It's unquiet because there's all this seeking going on. There is a push towards something else, but it's such a blind push. So there's a mist. That is the space in which this is happening. And it's a rayless region. There's no real light. It's swallowed in vague swathes, swathes of mist like floating, shapeless clouds. When we're in the mountains, it can be like this. We can't really see where we are going. We know there are valleys and peaks, but we don't see them because there are these mists, swathes, bandages, wrappings, coverings of mist. So he says that this mistiness seems almost like a mind, a formless mind that doesn't belong to anybody in particular, but it's searching like a mind might be searching to make sense of all this. But this region has no name.
What is swathes?
A swathe. It's like a cloud in the short form of a swathe. It's like a bandage or a veil. Yeah? So it's not any fixed form. But it's a mist. So, and that is surrounding or floating, wrapping up things so they can't be seen. Swathes of mist we talk about. And swathes, if they come a little bit more dense, they are like swaddling bands. Here we've got this word swaddled. This is what mothers used to do long ago with newborn babies in order to make sure that the body, the little limbs didn't become deformed. They wrapped them up in bandages, swaddling bands. So that's restricting the movement, wrapping it up in these swathes, these vague swathes. And this region, all this seeking that's going on, is it wants to have a form. It's asking for a body, a shape, enough density to have a body that could express the soul, that infant consciousness that's there, that's trying to evolve into something. But that is not given. Its prayer is denied. That body is not given. So it tries, it fumbles. Fumbling is when you can't really see what you're doing, you just try and feel your way. In a bag, trying to find something, fumbling clumsily. This consciousness is fumbling after thought. At least if it can't have a firm body, at least perhaps it can have some consciousness, some conscious contact. Martin.
As yet not power to think, hardly to live. It opened into the weird and pygmy world, where this unhappy magic had its source.
Yes. So, but it's not allowed to think. It hasn't got the power to think yet. It hardly has enough power, enough energy to live. Hardly to live. But that consciousness is opening into, Asvapati is aware of it, opening into a very strange pygmy, a world of tiny things. That's the world where this unhappy magic, this strange, mysterious state has had its beginning. Bhavana.
On dim confines where life and matter meet, he wandered among things half seen, half guessed, pursued by ungrasped beginnings and lost ends. There life was born, but died before he could live.
So there must have been a stage like this. On dim confines, there's not light, you can't clearly see these border lines, these limits. This is the frontier where life and matter meet. Asvapati is wandering there. He can half see certain things. He guesses at what he doesn't see. And it's as if he's being followed by things that want to begin and can't manage to begin, ungrasped beginnings and lost ends. This is a region where life is born, but died before it could live. There, the biologists tell us about early life forms that were like that just came into existence for a short time and then were gone again. Vidya.
There was no solid ground, no constant drift, only some flame of mindless will and power. Himself was linked to himself, half felt, obscure, as if in a struggle of the void to be. In strange domains where all was living sense, but mastering thought was not nor cause nor rule. Only a crude child heart cried for joys of bliss. Mind flickered, a disordered infant glow, and random shapeless energies drove towards form and took each wisp fire for a guiding sun.
Yes. So there's nothing firmly established here. No solid ground, not even a sense of direction, no constant drift. But he feels that there is some kind of will, a nameless will, a kind of energy, a flame, that has some power there and some effect. And in that world, Asvapati feels very dim to himself. Even his own self-awareness is only half-felt, obscure, perhaps in some half-waking state, half-dream state. We might have some kind of feeling like this. But it's as if the void, the emptiness, the nothingness, the asat is struggling to come into existence. There's a nothingness that wants to exist. So what he's experiencing is these strange domains, these strange regions, countries, where everything is living sense. The sense of touch, smell perhaps, some kind of perception by touch. But there's no kind of understanding, no mastering thought. No particular cause why things happen, no particular nothing is particularly dominant. There's no rule. But what there is this poor, crude child heart crying out for toys of bliss, the first delight of touch. Something really wants that enjoyment of the senses. There is some kind of beginning of mind there, flickering. This is like a candle flame in the wind. It's about to go out, flickering, no? Flickered. And it's disordered. There's no firm candle flame shape. It's changing because of this push, this disordered infant glow. It's just beginning to be a light. There are energies, random energies. They seem to have come, there's no cause, they've just come by chance. No? But there's this push towards form. They want to have form, body. And those energies, if they happen to see a little light somewhere, they follow it as if it's a guiding sun, a guiding star. This idea of the wisp fire in swampy regions where there's lots of decaying vegetation. There are gases, yeah? And some of those gases, they have their own light, bioluminescence. No? So, perhaps not as bright as the phosphorescence we see on the sea sometimes, but anyway, there may be a glow of light. So in folk tales we hear about these wisp fires. They just come, shapeless kind of light, and travelers think that, oh, there's a house, there's a safe place, I can find some shelter. They follow it, but they just fall into the swamp and get lost. So the tiny misleading lights, those energies feel that, oh, here is some guidance, here's something to follow. Sarojini.
Here it says, each wish finding there are many then.
Yes, any little light that comes, these flickering lights over the marshes. Yeah.
This blindfold force could place no thinking still. Asking for light, she followed darkness. An inconscient power moved towards consciousness. Matter
Smitten.
by matter glimmered to sense. Blind contacts, slow reactions wait out sparks. Of instinct from a clocked subliminal bed.
Sensations.
Crowded. Don't
Substitutes.
For thought.
Perception.
Answered natures, waiting gloom, but still was a mechanical response. A jerk, a leap, a start in nature's dream.
Let's pause there. This blindfold force, this light, it's as if her eyes are bandaged. She can't see. She cannot take any thinking step. There's no reason for taking one step rather than another. But there is this longing for light. But there isn't any light. So she has to follow whatever clue she can find there in the darkness, whatever little indication there is. This inconscient power, this power without consciousness, is groping towards consciousness. She knows that she needs consciousness. So the way that this works is that these little bodies keep bumping into each other. Matter smitten by matter. There's a bang, there's a blow. And when that happens, then there's a reaction. There's a faint lighting up that, oh, I felt something. A glimmer is a very faint light. Something touched me. Like that. These are blind contacts. And the reactions are slow. The contact happens, but the little beings don't realize it at once. It takes time. That, oh, something happened. But gradually, these contacts and these reactions, it's like somebody hammering on, striking one stone against another, so that a spark comes. So this, it comes beating out sparks. Sparks of what? Sparks of consciousness, of instinct. From this cloaked, subliminal bed, this underground of subliminal consciousness, consciousness that's still below the threshold. It hasn't become conscious. It's hidden, cloaked. So there are more and more of these sensations crowded, and these, they are not able to express themselves, but this is like a substitute for thought. It's not really thinking, but there's a sensation, an awareness. And through these blows, through these bumps and bangs, something wakes up. The power of perception, of noticing. Again and again, these contacts come, and something wakes up and notices. But this perception was still just a mechanical response. It's just an automatic reaction. Like when the doctor bangs your knee. It's a mechanical response. A jerk, that's what happens, a jerk, your leg jerks, a leap, a start in nature's dream. That nature is asleep still, but in her sleep, a little disturbance comes, and it's as if she moves, a start, sudden movement. Rita here.
And through unchastened impulses jostling ran, heedless of every motion but their own, and darkling clashed with darker than themselves, free in a world of settled anarchy.
So impulses, and they're unchastened, they're completely undisciplined, rude, crude, unchastened impulses, and they are running and bumping into each other. They don't think about the other beings around them. They're heedless, they're careless of every motion except just that motion. Each little impulse is following its own direction. And they are darkling, they are unconscious, and they clash with other impulses that are just as dark or even darker. There they all are teeming around, bumping into each other in this world of settled anarchy in which there's no rule, no cause, no direction. Anarchy here means without any kind of organization at all. Kamala.
The need to exist, the instinct to survive, across the returns of precarious moments will, and an unseen desire felt out for food.
So this is the instinct showing itself, an instinct to survive, to go on living. No? Yeah? The need to exist, to stay in existence, though they've actually been going out of existence. They've been dying almost as soon as they are born. No? But there is some sense that we have to survive, we have to go on living. This is occupying the entire will of those little beings. And the will is full of tension. At every moment they can cease to exist. So there's a sense of tension, of danger, and they need food. They have to devour their environment. So this blind desire, feeling out in all directions to find some nourishment. Joel.
The gifts of nature were the only law. Force wrestled with force, but no result remained. Only were achieved a nation's grasp and drive, and feelings and instincts, knowing not their source. Sense pleasures and sense pangs soon caught, soon lost, and the brute motion of unthinking lives.
Yes. So the gusts, the strong pushes, a gust is a strong wind. No, it comes and pushes you along. The gusts of nature. These were the only law in that place. Force struggles against another force, but there's no outcome, no result remained. So what is achieved in this strange world? This unconscious grasp, holding on to something without knowing what it is. Nescient grasp and this drive, moving towards something without knowing what it is. Feelings, sense feelings, instincts that are not aware of where they've come from at all. Sense pleasures and sense pangs, the two all go together, the pain and the pleasure. Caught for a moment, gone again. And this brute motion, unconscious motion of unthinking lives. They just struggling to live without knowing why or what for. So I think for millions of years, the only life forms on Earth were like this. They do know about something they call them stromatolites. They were perhaps something like the coral polyps, and they clustered together, and there are some kind of fossil remains in certain places. It must have been made by little beings like this. What I heard was 3.5 million years. This was the only life forms on Earth. And then something happened.
Kind of coral things.
Some strange little creatures like this. Perhaps they had many different forms. all in this same condition.
How much struggling it is.
Yes.
To evolve
And then you think that, oh, maybe some more advanced beings from other planets might have come and had a look and seen and thought, well, nothing's going to come of this planet, no? Because it all looks... who's sitting at the back there? Yes, would you read, please?
But Shraddhavan, we still have it.
Yes, I was thinking that all this is going on inside our bodies also. Yes, thank you, Rita. Yes, yes, please.
It was a vain, unnecessary word, whose will be growth, poor, and sad results, and meaningless, suffering, and great pansy. Nothing seemed worth the labor to begin.
This is what we would think if we saw it. And perhaps we think, all that labor, what for? No? It seems such a useless, unnecessary world with all these little beings wimmling around. And there seems to be some will there, but the results of all that effort, so poor, so sad, meaningless suffering, and this uneasiness because there's a will that's always driving for something more. So if we look at that world, we will say, what's the use? Nothing seemed worth the labor, all that effort to exist, to survive. What is it all about? But King Asvapati doesn't feel like that. Alice, would you read, please?
But judged not, so his spirit's wakened eye, as shines a solitary witness star that burns apart, light's lonely sentinel. In the drift and teeming of a mindless night, a single thinker in an aimless world, awaiting some tremendous dawn of God. He saw the purpose in the works of time.
This is Asvapati. He sees all that and he doesn't think, oh, how useless. Nothing's worth the effort to become. Because he's seeing with the fully awake, opened eye of his spirit consciousness, which is like a single star all alone in the dark sky, burning apart. It's the only sentinel, the only one who's awake, keeping watch with the light of consciousness in this drift and teeming of an aimless night. Teeming, it's when there's many, many small things moving around and apparently without any aim or direction. But he is waiting for some tremendous dawn of God. He knows that all this is leading somewhere, no? Because he can see the purpose in all this that's happening in time. This is the difference between an awakened consciousness and all those tiny, blind, unconscious little beings. Nidish, would you read, please?
Even in that aimlessness, a work was done, pregnant with magic, will, and change divine. The first writings of the cosmic serpent force, uncoiled from the mystic ring of matter's trance, it raised its head in the warm air of life.
Yes. So Asvapati sees it, even in that state which seems to be completely without any aim or direction. Something, some great work is being done that aimlessness is pregnant. It's going to give birth. It's going to give birth to a magical power of will, to a divine change. And what is this divine change? It's the first waking up of the cosmic serpent force, this energy, this power which is supporting the whole universe. It's beginning to wake up. In cold countries, serpents, snakes hibernate in the winter. They don't have the warmth and light they need to keep moving. And if you come across them, you may think it's just a piece of wood. But when the spring sunshine comes, they start to move. These first writhings, beginning to move, of this serpent force, this force that's driving the whole universe. It uncoils. It was all rolled up, keeping itself as warm as possible. It uncoils from this mystic ring of matter's trance, as if matter is that same serpent force, but in a state of trance, coiled up, asleep, in a coma. In the warmth, it begins to wake up. It raised its head in the warm air of life. That's what he knows, that's what he's seeing happening, these little meaningless movements. It's just the first beginnings, the waking up of the life force in matter.
The word Kundalini comes to my mind.
Well, we think of that as the serpent force in us, no? But that's at a much further, higher level.
The serpent force coming from the matter's trance.
Yes. Amrita.
It wouldn't cost of yet nice starting sleep, or where as he admires wandered lakes and streets, put on its
jeweled,
put the crown of soul, or stand erect in the blaze of spirit's sun.
This is the cosmic serpent force. It's just beginning to lift up its head in this warm air of life. But it's not yet able to cast off this stiffening sleep of the darkness and the cold, that has kept it like, apparently just like matter, a piece of stone or a stick. It can't yet begin to wear that wonderful colored skin, all those wonder flecks and streaks, when it begins to rise erect and open its hood and wear on its hood the jeweled, we see these pictures, of the Naga with the jeweled crown. This is the emblem of soul, of full consciousness. Eventually life will be able to do that, but not yet. It can't yet stand erect in the blaze of Spirit's sun. Dawn.
As yet, were only seen forms and form, the secret call of consciousness to life, through the fertile
slime
of lust and battling sense, beneath the body's crust of thickened self, the tardy fervent working in the dark, the turbid yeast of nature's passionate change, ferment of the soul's creation out of mire.
Mire is mud. So at this stage, which Aswapati is seeing now, all that can be seen is a certain amount of force, of energy, and foulness. It looks really disgusting, dirty. But what it is really is the secret crawl of consciousness coming out to light. But it has to crawl through this fertile slime. You know snails, they crawl along the ground and they leave a trail of slime behind them. Slime is really not very, it's a bit disgusting. But he says this is a fertile slime. This is something that can grow, that can give birth to life. But it's based on lust, intense, totally self-centered desire, and battening sense. The senses feeding on things to the point of destroying them completely. Battening, that's what scavengers do, you know. They take dead or dying forms and eat them up greedily. And he says this whole thing, this crawl, is going on beneath the body's crust of thickened self. So there's a kind of body forming of this crust, and beneath the crust, this progress is going on. It's a tardy, fervent working in the dark. It's happening slowly, out of sight, but there's a lot of energy there, something that's fervent. It really wants something to happen, but it's working away in the dark. And he says it's like yeast, the turbid yeast of nature's passionate change. I don't know if you've ever tried making your own bread, but if you want to make bread, you need to have something that will make the bread rise. Otherwise, it'll be very, very hard, and you'll only have crust. So yeast is a substance, when we warm it up with a little warm milk, it starts to bubble, and to this is this working of yeast, and we use it to make bread and to make beer.
Yeast is also these little creatures.
I suppose so. It must have some life in it, no? But actually when we get it, we get dry yeast. It's a form of just little globules. We have to add, I think, a little bit of sugar and a little bit of warm water or milk, and then it begins to bubble, and we can work it into our flour and water, our dough. And if we keep it somewhere warm, up it will come, you know, and you'll get delicious bread, hopefully. So this process is called fermentation. This is the ferment of the soul's creation out of Maya. To start with, there's just mud, matter, unconscious matter. But somebody's put some yeast in, and it's bubbling and growing, and life is emerging, something much more energetic. You'll read, please, Suresh.
The heavenly process burned is great discipline. A fallen ignorance in its covered night. Labor to achieve its dumb, unseemly work.
Camouflage
Of the inconscient need to release the glory of God in nature's
mud. So he says a heavenly process has disguised itself in this way. All these tiny little slimes and molds and ugly little creatures. He says, actually, this is the disguise of a heavenly process, of fallen ignorance in its covert night, covered up by the darkness, is laboring away in the darkness to achieve this work that it's doing. And this work is dumb, it can't express itself, and it's unseemly, it's ugly, it's even disgusting. But this is a camouflage, it's a disguise. Some animals camouflage themselves, octopuses and chameleons. They put on different colors and shapes to hide themselves. So in the same way, something in matter, in the inconscient, has disguised itself like this. What it's really doing, what it really needs to do, it's urgently trying to do, is to release the glory of God in the mud of matter. And the glory of God that will come when human beings become really divine beings. But first we have to pass through all these stages, and this is a very, very early stage of that. So that's where we'll stop today. A wide, unquiet mist of seeking space, a rayless region swallowed in vague swathes that seemed unnamed, unbodied, and unhoused, a swaddled, visionless, and formless mind asked for a body to translate its soul. Its prayer denied, it fumbled after thought. As yet not powered to think, hardly to live, it opened into a weird and pygmy world where this unhappy magic had its source. On dim confines where life and matter meet, he wandered among things half seen, half guessed, pursued by ungrasped beginnings and lost ends. There life was born, but died before it could live. There was no solid ground, no constant drift, only some flame of mindless will had power. Himself was dim to himself, half felt, obscure, as if in a struggle of the void to be. In strange domains, where all was living sense, but mastering thought was not, nor cause, nor rule, only a crude child heart cried for toys of bliss. Mind flickered a disordered infant glow, and random shapeless energies drove towards form and took each wisp fire for a guiding sun. This blindfold force could place no thinking step. Asking for light, she followed darkness' clue. An inconscient power groped towards consciousness. Matter smitten by matter glimmered to sense. Blind contacts, slow reactions, beat out sparks of instinct from a cloaked subliminal bed. Sensations crowded, dumb substitutes for thought. Perception answered nature's wakening blows, but still was a mechanical response, a jerk, a leap, a start in nature's dream. And rude, unchastened impulses jostling ran, heedless of every motion but their own, and darkling clashed with darker than themselves, free in a world of settled anarchy. The need to exist, the instinct to survive, engrossed the tense, precarious moment's will, and an unseeing desire felt out for food. The gusts of nature were the only law. Force wrestled with force, but no result remained. Only were achieved a nescient grasp and drive, and feelings and instincts knowing not their source. Sense pleasures and sense pangs soon caught, soon lost, and the brute motion of unthinking lives. It was a vain, unnecessary world, whose will to be brought poor and sad results, and meaningless suffering, and a grey unease. Nothing seemed worth the labour to become. But judged not so his spirit's wakened eye. As shines a solitary witness star that burns apart light's lonely sentinel, in the drift and teeming of a mindless night, a single thinker in an aimless world, awaiting some tremendous dawn of God. He saw the purpose in the works of time. Even in that aimlessness, a work was done, pregnant with magic will and change divine. The first writhings of the cosmic serpent force uncoiled from the mystic ring of matter's chance. It raised its head in the warm air of life. It could not cast off yet night's stiffening sleep, or wear as yet mind's wonder flecks and streaks. Put on its jewelled hood the crown of soul, or stand erect in the blaze of spirit's sun. As yet were only seen foulness and force, the secret crawl of consciousness to light through a fertile slime of lust and battening sense. Beneath the body's crust of thickened self, a tardy, fervent working in the dark, the turbid yeast of nature's passionate change, ferment of the soul's creation out of mire. A heavenly process donned this grey disguise. A fallen ignorance in its covered night laboured to achieve its dumb, unseemly work, a camouflage of the inconscious need to release the glory of God in nature's mud.